manganese ferroalloy producing facilities in America. One of them is in Marietta, Ohio. One of them is in Letart, West Virginia. The EPA is about to issue a rule around clean air standards that will essentially shut those two facilities down. It will destroy over 500 jobs. But what you were just talking about is even more staggering. Without the ability to produce manganese ferroalloy here in America, we don't make steel. Now, we've got to have steel, so what that means is we wind up having to go buy that material from our competitors overseas, like China and Korea and Japan and others. That's what we've done over time. We've got one of the most onerous and burdensome corporate tax structures in the world. We've got trillions of dollars sitting overseas right now, American companies that would love to bring that money back to America, invest it here, grow, expand, innovate, compete. That's what America does. But they're not going to do that because the federal government is going to take 35 cents of every dollar that they try to bring back. We're working to stop that kind of thing. We're working to eliminate the federal tax code and replace it with one that is fairer, flatter, and simpler. We're working to implement regulatory reform. I have sponsored legislation that would require that the president and his activist regulatory agencies like the EPA, that they would have to get congressional approval. That's the voice of the American people. That he would have to get the American people's approval before implementing new regulations that cost our economy over a certain amount. You are exactly right. I appreciate so much your question, and it is a daily battle to change the culture here in Washington, D.C., and we're making progress. It's slow, but we are making progress. We're no longer talking about how much to spend. We're now talking about how much to cut. And it's a day in, day out fight. I appreciate your question, and we're going to continue that fight. Thank you so very much for your kind words. Let me report to you the results of your question. I asked you if you would vote to repeal the medical device tax that will raise the cost of health care. Almost 93% of you said you would also vote to repeal that tax. I appreciate that feedback. It gives me a great deal of confidence as we go into that issue this afternoon. Let me ask you another question and get your feedback while we talk to some callers. Here it is. Because, in part, of President Obama's war on the coal industry, Americans are paying, on average, $300 more per year in electricity prices. Do you think we need to stop President Obama's war on the coal industry and the jobs that go with it? Press 1 for yes, press 2 for no. Again, because in part of President Obama's war on the coal industry, Americans are paying, on average, $300 more per year in electricity prices. Do you think we need to stop President Obama's war on the coal industry and the jobs that go with it? Press 1 for yes, press 2 for no. This is Congressman Bill Johnson, and if you have a question, press 0 on your keypad. You'll get into the question queue, and then we'll get you right back into the call. Let's go to our next caller down in St. Clairsville. Theodora, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine. I've been listening to a lot of conversations, and I'm in Barnesville, Ohio, which is right on the edge of St. Clairsville.
Yes, ma'am. I'm familiar with it.
Okay. I have listened to you, and I have done a lot of contributing to you, which I can no longer do. We are broke at this point. And I would like to know, how do we get around to these American people? They don't know what is happening in Belmont County. You have no idea how ignorant they are. And it drives me nuts, because that's what the one thing that my husband and I do. We talk to people galore. And it's a shame. The other thing in connection with that is, I do not know way ahead of time, and I would like to know, we would both like to know, my husband and I, new candidates that are trying to get into the Senate from here, so we have names that we can vote for and know who they are. I don't get Times Leader, and we get just the Enterprise, and we do not get information so that we can vote responsibly and what we think they know about what's going on.
Yeah, Theodora, you make a great point. You know, if there is one thing that I believe that we have learned as American citizens over the last 3 to 4 years, it is that we have a tremendous responsibility, a tremendous civic responsibility. Let's back up and talk about, for example, the Constitution of the United States, what I said a little earlier. The Constitution of the United States places the power of the federal government in the hands of the governed, of the people. And our ability to influence and accept that responsibility, it starts at the ballot box. It starts with our vote. It amazes me that only about 1 in 3 people in America vote. And so many times they just vote for a name that they recognize or something like that, with little consideration for the character of the individual, for the credentials of the individual. We do a great disservice to our nation when we allow that to happen. I used to get asked the question all the time whether or not I would support term limits. Well, guess what? We've got term limits in the U.S. House of Representatives. It's every 2 years. The American people, the people of the 6th District of Ohio, get to evaluate my job performance and decide whether or not they're going to retain me or whether or not they're going to replace me with somebody else. We have term limits. It's called our right to vote. So I can't tell you how appreciative I am that you asked that question, because I don't get a chance to talk about civic responsibility very often, but I speak to high schools, I speak to college students, every opportunity I get to talk to our young people about accepting that civic responsibility, getting registered to vote, learning and understanding who your candidates are, what they stand for, where they come from. Do they understand your issues and concerns? Those are the kinds of things that the American people are beginning to grapple with. Hey, let me ask you a question one more time before we move on here. Because in part of President Obama's war on coal, Americans are paying on average $300 more per year for electricity prices. Do you think we need to stop President Obama's war on the coal industry and the jobs that go with it? Press 1 for yes, press 2 for no.